When it comes to achieving a more natural sound in American English, you can happen that you have some questions about what to do. Where do you put your tongue? What are some of the differences between sounds and things like that? Well, today, in this episode of the Schwa Mill, we're going to be just looking at a couple of the questions that people have asked me over the last week and try to give some answers to them. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Schwa Mill. This is your American English pronunciation review show. We've been having it right around Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays around 7:30 a.m. in New York. However, I do have to note that for the next couple weeks at least, we're going to have to do a schedule change. I'm still trying to figure out when the time will be best, but I still would like to have it on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. I just don't know the exact time yet. So, in any case, we're here for today at least. So in a future episode, we'll go back to listening to audio files. But again, some questions have piled up because I wasn't able to have a session last week. So let's try to answer some of the questions. And of course, if you have a question that you would like to be answered in this or a future stream, you can leave it in chat, in the comments, in the replay, or you can join our free group on Telegram where people send us questions and audio files. Okay, what's up to David hanging out with us? All right, our first question for today. Let me just move this up a little bit. All right, let's take a look. And they ask us, hey, Geoff, quick question. Are City and Siri pronounced the same? No, they are not. So the first one, City, uses what is called a fast D sound or a flap T sound. And then for Siri, like on Apple, that uses an R sound. Now, I will say that fast D sounds oftentimes by linguists are more connected to R sounds than they are actually to D sounds and T sounds. There is a relationship between them. This is not a ridiculous question. That being said, the sound is a little bit different. So one way you can kind of practice is just try to go from an I to an E with that fast D. It's like itty, 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 versus doing it with the R sound, eerie, 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 eerie. Can you kind of hear the difference between those? Itty, 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 eerie, 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 itty, eerie, eerie, eerie. So it's kind of like the difference between and ear, ear, ear. If you can hear a difference between those, that's basically going to be the difference in how those two words start. So city will start with an Siri will start more with an ear, ear, ear type sound. Hopefully that helps you with distinguishing the difference between them. Let's take a look at our second one. Thank you for sending that question, by the way. Thanks to all our people who've been sending questions. They've been asking some good ones. Our next question is, this is the letter S of flowers pronounced as a Z. Yes, those are other words that has the same rule to pronounce it. Yes. Give me a second to see if I can find a little file I use with students sometimes. So there are two different sounds, right? S sounds and D sounds. In general, what you're going to see is that when a word ends on a voice sound and there's an S after it, then that means that S becomes a Z. What is a voice sound? So if you have your hand on your throat, try to adjust my camera a little bit. So if you have your hand there when you talk, and you make a voice sound, like you make like in flowers, it ends on an sound. So if you make an sound, just like you should feel some vibration in your throat, right? So that means that if you follow that with an S sound, then in general, that S is going to take on a Z sound. It's like flowers. Okay. That Z, by the way, is not going to be super heavy, right? It's not, we're saying flowers, it's more just a quick like flowers. If the sound before the S is voiceless, so if you have your hand on your throat and you don't feel any vibration, then the S will stay voiceless too and stay an S sound. It's like books. It's like flowers versus books. Here's a quick list that you can take some screenshots of if you want to study with, or you can pause the screen. These are not the only words, but just some words to kind of give you a guide. So again, voiceless consonants that are going to use an S sound at the ends, like books, eats, helps, makes, likes. Sorry, let me bring that up. Here you go. Okay, So again, our voices sounds, S at the end. It's like books, eats, helps, makes, likes, surfs. Voice sounds. So again, these G's, R's, D's, these are voice sounds. So those S's will be voiced. It's like eggs, cars, beds, lives or lives, loans, feels. When you have a double S, those S's will stay. S sounds. It's like boss, less, lesson, success, essay. Here are just a list of some very high frequency words that end on S, where the S will be voiced. Okay, it's like was, his, these, goes, because, is, hers, those, does, as, has, whose, always. So those are words that are just always going to have that voice sound. Okay, so hopefully that is helpful for that. Thank you so much for asking that question. It's a good one. It's one that comes up very regularly, and it's a perfect time for it to come back. All right, next question that we have is going to be placement related. Bit of a long one here. So we have going on. I was practicing with varying placements, and I found out that the lower placements is where I struggle. In the video, you said that where you struggle is where you should practice more. So by practice, you mean just general placement practice or something else in this case? Yeah, I mean, I think a mix of both. I don't think purely just placement. One of the things we see is that a lot of the concepts we discuss are connected. So if you use, for instance, more breath, you add more breath to your speech, what you're going to find is that it also helps lower your placement. The more you engage your diaphragm, the lower your voice is going to go. So that's going to lower the placement. As you add more breath, things can start blending together more. So we need our areas of contrast and things like that. So going back to our purposes, yeah, I do think that you should continue practicing placement. So continue doing things like your scales, like this. Continue doing like your lip trills and things like that, like just to practice moving things around. But in addition to that, maybe also spend more time practicing using your diaphragm, engaging your diaphragm, adding breath to the things you say. All of those things can be very helpful, and also in terms of practicing your placement. Okay. Also things like shadowing. Because the other thing too is that, yeah, we want to practice getting used to a low placement, because most likely English is using a lower placement than what you're using in your first language. That's true. However, that doesn't mean that everything we say is at a low placement. For instance, even the way I just said, however, there was at a higher placement than the way I'm talking right now. So we need to be able to vary placement, especially as we need to move pitch around. So don't get married to a low placement. It's a general guideline, but it's not going to be the thing for everything. Okay, but we do need to have some flexibility with it. However, if you never use the low placement, it's going to be hard to get to the default kind of American English sound. Thank you for the question. You guys are asking some good ones. Our next question here. What we got? I have a question. I know that in the American accent, the tip of the tongue generally tends to be used much less than the middle of the back or part of the tongue plays a major role in forming the sounds. So, when making vowel sounds, does the tip of the tongue point to the floor of the mouth, or is it pointed up, or does it matter? Okay, and then we have some example sounds here. Not all these sounds are in the IPA chart, so I'll try my best. So I'm guessing that's like an E sound, an I sound, short I maybe, a Y sound, an sound. I'm guessing that's like an sound versus an U sound, an O sound, S sound. All of these sounds are made with the tongue being the front, middle, back, high positions. Where would the tip of the tongue need to be? So one of the things with mouth charts and mouth position things, one of the reasons why I don't teach mouth position a lot is that, yeah, the charts aren't wrong. However, they're not, again, considering all those things like placement and breath and things like that. And one of the things they're also doing is sometimes they're putting the sounds into positions that are similar to our first language. Like if you have a universal sound, like an oo sound, it might be easier to go back to how you pronounce it in your first language. And we're trying to avoid that, right? So I think the more we can like create a new association in English with a sound, the harder it is to go back to how it sounds in our first language. Like we want to treat English as every sound is new. So those mouth charts aren't wrong. They work. But there's a caveat, put a little asterisk next to it. They work as long as you also have the proper breath and the proper placement and things like that. Okay. So one of the things that you're going to find is that, yes, those mouth charts work. Other positions might work too, though. Like I can do an sound like this, but I can also do like you know, and in general, that's going to give a sound that's similar enough to my listener that they're going to hear an sound without really noticing much difference. Okay, so when it comes to where do we put our tongue, there's actually a fair amount of flexibility. There's a lot of different places where we can put our tongue, which is why a lot of times if you see the videos, we do things like the straight lip challenge. Like we try to just say all our sentences like with really straight lips. Um, or like we do, like, for instance, like keeping your tongue down challenges where, for instance, everything I'm saying right now is with the tip of my tongue against my bottom front tooth with minimal movement. Okay, so in general, can you have higher tongue position things with the tip of your tongue? You can. Like I can say like E, I, O, A, like A. Like I'm trying to open my mouth so you guys can see where my tongue is. So this is me with the tip of my tongue high. It's like E, I, O, A. Versus I can also have the tip of my tongue down, right? E, I, O, A. Okay, so one of the things we see is that the front of the tongue maybe is not so important in terms of where we put it and getting the sound across. So experiment. Experiment with having the tongue high. Experiment with having the tongue low. See which one allows you to have more breath. See which one gives you the more natural sound that you're looking for. And maybe stick with that. Okay. But yes, the short answer is the front of the tongue can go in multiple different places and you can still achieve a natural sound. If you're talking and you're not sounding natural, um, experiment with moving the front of the tongue. It may help. All right, I think I'm caught up on the general questions that I'm able to answer. Tomorrow we'll go back to listening to some audio files. I'm not entirely sure what time it will be. We'll try to figure out my schedule and accommodate accordingly. But thank you guys for your patience. Thanks for hanging out with me too. There's a lot of pronunciation resources out there, so the fact that you're here spending some time with me once more is appreciated. I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon. Take care, guys.